Hello and welcome to another episode in our mini-series from the Developing Practice podcast. This series is all about hybrid practice, whether that be leading hybrid teams, developing hybrid teaching, or working in a hybrid manner. We have spoken with lots of guests over the past couple of years and have extracted snippets of conversations for this series. Today's compilation is all about the experiences of networking in a hybrid environment. We hope you enjoy. I'm going to ask a bit of it's a personal question for me because I am not an extrovert. I sometimes think I flip between extrovert and introvert depending on the situation I'm in. So, for example, I'm going to seek your advice here. So let's say I'm at a conference. I'm very comfortable being at a table and having a conversation with around 5 or 6 people. But once you go out into that bigger room, say you have those tea and coffee breaks and it's sort of organized networking. So it's like, okay, go and get a cup of coffee and go speak to somebody. Then I go very introverted and I just do not want to break into anybody else's conversation and introduce myself. It just feels completely alien to me. So what would your advice be in that situation?
So now, whilst I'm an extrovert, I hate large groups and I don't do it. So right, I think it's really important to play to your character and your strengths. When we go back to networking at events, you've got to make it as comfortable as possible. Right, so therefore, if we're doing the teas and coffees where there's 2 or 3 people, it's great to have a nice chat. And then they say, right, okay, go and play. What I always tend to do is I look for small groups, because when everyone stands up, they'll be in groups of, say, well, you go from, obviously you've got one standing on their own, but you've then got 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s. Now, I will go to a maximum of 3. I won't go into the 4s and the 5s. Now, the reason why I won't do a 4 is because I make the 5th. The second you make the 5th, then quite often the group will break anyway. So therefore, I'm just as happy going into my 3. But 2s and 3s are my preferences. And that's from someone who's a gregarious person. The reason is because I sort of feel that when you go into bigger groups, quite often the group will split, but also then you've still got the dominant and the other dominant, and they're chatting away, and then you've got everyone else looking at them as though they were presenters. Okay, no one else really sort of stands a chance anyway. So I'd much rather go in and have easy-going chats rather than try and strain myself over trying to get in when I need to. I think one of the sub question around this one really is, who do you actually want to go and talk to, and how important is this person in the context of the room? So if it's just more random stuff, just go and say hello, meet some people and have nice chats, and then definitely look at the size of the group, but also look at the dynamic of the group. Now, I must admit, if I was to, I would avoid what I call still people on my initial round. And the reason for that is because still people quite often, not always, quite often depict introverts. So I tend to look for a flappy group, which can be a lot of women actually. But I look for an animated group, if you like, where there is gestures going on. I mean, as you can see, I know we're doing a podcast here, but I'm flapping my hands around all the time. Okay, I have to be really careful when I'm doing my own interviews because I have to sit on my hands. I am a movement person. I'm a gesture person. So I tend to look for characteristics that on the face of it look like me. Right. So what you can do is look for the characteristics in a group that make you feel comfortable, and then go and join the group. Yeah, and then as you build your confidence, or when you feel more comfortable, whatever works for you, then you can then start going into the ones that look different. Now, one of the tricks of the trade here is that I think everyone needs to practice being with people that are not like them. So what I do is I go into my more gregarious group, and then what I will do is actually I'll then go and join a more considered group, a more what looks to be a quieter group, because it's important for me to not just network with people like me, but to actually broaden those networks out. So one of the other things is, people who are different to me will be tall. I mean, I'm a short person. You can't tell when I'm sitting down, but actually I'm a little person. So I would go and talk to tall people. I would also go and talk to people who just come across as intimidating. You'll have your own perception as what that means. But in order for me to be confident, most of my decision makers are normally quite intimidating people. So it's one of my ways of keeping myself fresh with my skill sets is by talking to people that are just not like me.
And how does that translate, Heather, over into kind of the online environment? So we've been working a little bit on this in the university, thinking about networking maybe at conferences or network events, and using kind of online tools to help people to artificially network. Matt, tell us about the tool that you were using where there's a bar and table.
Yeah. So to try and get people out of Zoom calls and Teams meetings and things, these were particularly for the new starters at the university. There's an online space called Kumo Space, where people come on into a room and they can move their video heads around a room. And say if they move around, they can a group of people can go over to the bar, a group of people can go over to the swimming pool, some people can go over to where the DJ booth is, and there's actual music coming out of the DJ booth. We use that platform to try and recreate what it would be like in a room, because the closer you are to somebody on the screen, the louder they become in your ears. So we tried to use that, but it's really difficult to get off the ground, because I say to new starters, right, we're going to have a networking session. And then the first time I ran one, nobody turned up. The second time I ran one, we got 6 people. And the third one's later this month, and I'm really hoping I get more than 6. So yeah, I mean, how do we get people into those spaces, and how do we make the most of them while they're in there, particularly when it's online, I guess, is the question.
Actually, it reminds me so much of, it's no different to what we used to do. Okay. Most people, if you say to them, do you like networking? Okay, they will have a view as to what does that mean. And I would say the majority of people don't like networking. Okay, so therefore saying to somebody, come and network, in itself is a big turn off. So I would actually change your language, if you like, and come up with something different. Now, the way that you bring people into networking events is there's a couple of things. One is, if you just sort of say, we're just going to socialize, we can socialize by the pool. I love this software. I need to know about this software. But I love the idea of being by the bar, the DJ and the swimming pool. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. And right, so just random stuff doesn't make sense. There are those who just go, yeah, I'll talk to anyone. And there's lots of people going, yeah, do not want to do that. I mean, you've already said yourself, Matt, that, when they sort of say, right, okay, go off and talk to people, it's not what you particularly want to go and do. I mean, you don't mind doing it, you'll do it, and I should imagine you do it very successfully. However, it's not in your heart and soul. So with this small percentage of people who just go, yeah, great, dive in, they would just go, this is fantastic. But the rest of them will be going, why? Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to give up my evening or my afternoon to go and talk to people that I don't know, I'm not particularly interested in, and they probably are going to be boring, and I'm going to get stuck on a Zoom call? Do you know what I mean? So therefore, so what you look to do is actually you want to give people a reason. So if you look at when the networking events happened, conferences were happening, there was a reason why you turned up, and mostly that reason why is because there's an expert in a field, or there is just a really interesting topic, or someone really different and unusual. So what you want to do is actually use the same methods by saying, okay, fine. I mean, and of course the difficulty is that it's going to be another presentation. But if you come up with something socially fun, so I don't know, let's sort of say when new starters, when they sort of turn up, I don't know if in the old days we would do, photographs underneath a banner or something. So when they first come in, they can go into a room where there's a banner and they can get their picture taken and sort of welcome to the team or something. or whether or not you send them something. I don't know. And because people have been doing casinos and wine tasting and games and quizzes and all of those sort of things. So what you're doing is you're looking to appeal to a different side of their natures. There's a reason for it. Random stuff is still a painful experience. And I think because we're spending so much time on the internet anyway, Zooms and stuff, is that why would I want to do another Zoom call? It's just the same stuff, isn't it? But this time it's going to be more painful. Now, the other thing that we used to do as well used to have a small team that would actually look after people. I was working with another company the other day, and I was sort of saying to them, right, so when you do your Zoom calls, what you want to do is you want to make sure the team is fully briefed as to what their roles are. So you've got the leader who's going to, maybe do the presentations and perhaps manage and control the conversation. But that leaves then the rest of the team to do other things. So this is a generalism. So excuse me for saying this. But you could say the introverts are going to be great listeners. Okay. So we were on this Zoom call. I have my extroverts there and I have my introverts. So I said to the introverts there, right, what role would you like by running this conference? What do you think you would be really good at doing and you would actually enjoy doing? And one of them quite rightly turned around and said, I'd like to listen to what's going on. And all I added in was, okay, then all you've got to do is, if you're the listener, your job is to debrief the team afterwards, going, these were the patterns, these were the trends, these were the themes of conversations. So then they can listen actively for the team, allowing the leader to do all the interaction and not worry about picking up. So we come back to, what if you've got a few people who are going to manage this, what could the team do that is plays to their strengths, that enables them? Because then you could have people who are going to sit at the bar, for example, who then welcome somebody in. What would you like to drink? Get yourself a G&T or whatever it's going to be. But their job is to make the introductions, is to make people feel at ease. No different to what we used to do.
So we've talked about kind of those online connections or hybrid connections, but how can we make initial connections or reach out when face-to-face interactions are restricted, do you think? So that kind of initial building of relationships with new research partners, for example.
I found that definitely making use of existing networks. So, and by this I mean that as PIs, as researchers, we may not be the best placed person to do that. So we need to learn from the knowledge on the ground. So I think asking your existing collaborators or contacts, the LMIC countries, to mobilise, I think is a good first step. And I think they can often lead you rather than the other way around. So I think that's been something that I found immensely helpful in the three projects that I'm leading on. Also, it's worth saying that the community groups themselves in these countries are mobilising and are also desperate themselves to create their own ongoing communities when they cannot meet physically face to face. So, in fact, and a lot of the pressures that they find themselves under have increased during periods of lockdown in their own countries. So I think it's being attentive to their needs as well, but also just seeing what local groups are already mobilising and meeting in virtual format.
I'd like to just add to that about making use of the networks that we have in Liverpool as well. Because if you looked across the university and the collective of where people are connected to, it's probably most places in the world collectively. So what use can you make of those connections for people who are perhaps in a completely different field to you, but have a connection with an institution in a particular country that you would like to work with? And what introductions can be made that way as well. So yeah, as well as the connections in country, let's look at our own connections too and how we can connect people up.
I think as well, it's still possible to reach out to people. It's just going to be different. So where in the past you might have bumped into someone at a conference or engineered a situation where you bumped into someone, here you kind of have to be, again, this thing of being a little bit more deliberate about it, which is okay because everybody's in the same boat. They're not, they expect this sort of thing. And the big advantage, of course, is you could really think about how are you going to introduce yourself to that person? What's the hook you're going to put across to them? And you don't have to think off the top of your head because you've got the advantage of actually preparing it and then, reaching out with an email or whichever technique is best. So you kind of take that disadvantage and try to turn it into a little bit of an advantage. And I think the other thing is if you're organizing an event, it's always hard to replicate that sort of networking. But there are some simple tricks like leaving the event open after the speakers have gone, because what happens with a lot of events is as soon as the speaker stops speaking, the event is closed down. So any kind of informal networking, you shut off immediately. So if you're setting something up where you want to try to encourage that, you could either set up like a deliberate part of your event that's going to be for networking, or you could do those very kind of small things that maybe do lead to those kind of small links being made.
That's really interesting. Everything that you guys have been talking about so far is about forming relationships in many ways. Just something that I think it was the HR director said yesterday about using online medium is great to maintain relationships, but difficult to form them. So I just wanted your hot take on that. Are you finding the same thing?
So maybe if I can just jump in here first, I think this is something that all of us who have both a foot in research and a foot in teaching are constantly dealing with on a daily basis. And we have this year a cohort of students who, for the most part, have met each other only online. I'm talking about first years here, obviously. So I think it's thinking through kind of creative ways to allow those kind of first steps. So it transfers through to what we do in our research. So it's things like doing some warm-up activities or setting people, say, a particular topic for discussion, which is just to get them talking to other people. Or, for example, some of the things that we've done in some of my research events, we've asked our participants to come along with an object that symbolises something important about the community or the organisation they represent, and they have a minute and they just say this represents whatever. So it's a way kind of to break the ice and to get those relationships going before you then get into the kind of the really sort of more technical or academic kind of questions that you want to get people thinking about. So I think those sorts of things, icebreakers, breakout groups, anything that gets people chatting and it's not just about the actual research itself, I think that's key to getting those relationships started.
Yeah, I went to a conference the other day and the first thing they did was put us in breakout rooms and we had to hold up our mug and describe why we'd chosen that mug, which at the time it was slightly cringy, but it got us talking. And actually then when we went into breakout rooms later, that kind of, as you say, that ice had been broken in terms of it felt a lot more comfortable because I blagged something about my mug. I was just glad it was clean.
And I was just going to say, it helps you to remember people as well then. If they've said something, I don't know, off the wall about themselves and their mug, you're more likely to remember.